Welcome back to the Within podcast. This is your co-host, I should say, Nicky Wallace. We have Ali and Heidi on today. After talking last week, we wanted to go a little bit deeper with some of the conversation around, because I think I was surprised by a lot of the culture conversation, but specifically on listening sessions, because I think this is something, or we believe that this is probably something a lot of organizations could do more of, fairly easy, outside of assessments and all of that. But I'm going to kick it back to Ali and let's get talking about listening sessions.
Awesome. Well, I think listening sessions are probably one of the most powerful things you can do as an organization. And it really applies to everything, not just culture, not just, benefits, not just resources, like not just your strategy, but really just like everything that you do as an organization. Mm-hmm. Listening sessions can be very, very powerful. Many times we think we know what employees want and need, whether it's from their leader or from, the benefit strategy or, from a development. But at the end of the day, unless you're talking and asking your employees on a pretty regular basis, we've done listening sessions for organizations every year. And we do a certain subset of employees and they get invited to participate. And we have a list of topics. We use some technology to make sure we're capturing what they're saying and what they want, and then giving the leaders and the executive team a specific real-time feedback on what your employees think of you, want from you, and how they want you to show up is just a super powerful topic. So I know Heidi and Nicky both are very interested and intrigued by listening sessions. Heidi's actually done a ton of listening sessions with me. So Heidi, do you want to talk to us a little bit about, the value you see in listening sessions? And then maybe Nicky, you can round it out with, how you think you could apply it to some of the organizations you work with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree, Ali. Listening sessions are very powerful. And what I love about them is, first of all, is just thinking about how you set them up, the dynamics of the people that are going to be in the room, the questions that you're going to be asking. But then when you're actually there, and this kind of ties into a little bit of one of the Wish I Would Have Known episodes that we did around just curiosity and,
Mm-hmm.
asking questions.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes you find that the questions you start with lead into a lot of other questions. And so it's just kind of fun to be able to continue the dialogue and being curious with the people that are in the room. And each listening session is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
Those very questions that you asked, the prior one may not be the same questions that you end up asking the next group, because you do tend to have several groups that you're doing them with. But the other thing too with the listening sessions is finding the people in the room that are willing to provide feedback and share, and how you kind of pull them out a little bit. And then by them starting to talk, how much it just kind of, I don't want to say freeze the space, but make sure that it just feels more like a safe space where people are willing to share. And then just more and more dialogue continues to happen. And just I love facilitating the listening sessions, just because that's kind of, I don't want to say it's a challenge, but you start out, with one question and people look at you like with a blank face. And then by the end of the
you're HR, I don't want to talk to you. That's what I always
get. End of the session, an hour and a half, whatever time frame we choose. Sometimes they do run a little bit long, just because you don't want to cut off good dialogue that's happening. But again, people I think appreciate being asked. And that we're listening. And sometimes when you're asking those follow-up questions, it just shows that you truly care. It's not just, okay, well, let's move on to the next question. And so it's really just conversational, and just the value of that can be very powerful for an organization and what they learn. And sometimes when you, like I said, put together the groups, the dynamics of having a leader in the group or not is something that you have to think about, because you don't want to stifle the conversation. But sometimes if they know that the leader's someone that's very open and already is having, one-on-one conversations and having, dialogue with employees, and they feel trusted, there's kind of a trust relationship there. There's power in having the leader in the conversation, because they sometimes might want to ask their own question. And, and bring that. So it's not just us facilitating. Sometimes those leaders get involved. And so, again, they can be very powerful.
Yeah. I'm like, I feel like now that we're rolling with this, I have a lot of thoughts and ideas. But I think when I was doing, so I started with a company a couple of years ago, and I was doing listening sessions without even realizing that we were doing listening sessions. Like now that I know what they are, I'm like, oh, that was kind of like what we were doing. But I think it was small business and they were struggling they had been growing. They knew they needed to grow their operations team. So then they slapped 2 people in there. So all of a sudden their operations team goes from 2 people to 4 people. And it was kind of like, they were 6 months into their role and it's like, why am I here? What am I doing? And what am I supposed to be doing? Right. And I think the one person that had been there for a while, she hadn't given up, all the passwords and all the tools and like all of the things. She just was doing them because they were easy. So I think when I sat down and started talking with some of these organizations, or with this in particular, and I've seen this in a couple of other small businesses where it's like you hire, you don't really know, you need the help, you don't really know why you need the help or where you need the help. You just know, there's too much work for the 1 or 2 people that are doing it, or the 4 or 5 or whatever your number is. So doing that exercise opened up kind of like a whole bottle of worms. But again, it was a small organization. They didn't want to go talk to the leader or so a couple of these people were just showing up every day and hoping they got something to do and hoping that they didn't get fired because they didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. So I think it also helped this organization understand where I can support better. So or like, where are their gaps? So they thought they had hired people to do, X, Y, G, Z role. And one of the people didn't even have really that skill set to do that. So I stepped in and it's like, I'm trying to kind of help her build out, systems and understand where they're supposed to be going with that role. But again, just like from a small business perspective, I think it's interesting, like had they not taken the time to have me come in and do these conversations with their employees, those 2 people would have left. I mean, hands down. One I think was very close to leaving at the time because she just felt undervalued. She's like, I have way more to give. And I'm sitting at the front desk every day, not even sure like why I'm here most days, but I love the organization. I want to support the organization. Something needs to change. So, I don't know. Again, I didn't even realize I was doing a listening session when we came in and did it, but I was like, we need to communicate, right? We need to ask the questions and the amount of information. And the cool thing is the new people have a ton of ideas. So neither of them have worked in a small organization where they've had to really start something. So like they had to figure out the system, they had to figure out how to grow it and evolve it. But they had some pretty cool ideas of how the people in the field could get supported or needed to be supported and what that could look like for them to do. So that's kind of my favorite part of coming in. And yes, I guess I'm HR, but also like I do understand business. So being able to support them in, what tool could this look like to be able to then help you evolve your role and be able to support the organization like you want. So anyway, rambling, but
buy-in. I mean,
yes.
you get buy-in from the people.
Yes.
Well, yeah. But the most important thing, I think, when you do listening sessions is you actually have to take action. Yes, so like if you want to do listening sessions and you're not going to take action, like that's a problem. So don't do it. Like don't waste your time. And I tell that to organizations, like if you're going to do listening sessions,
you're good about that.
and you're not going to do anything, don't do it. Like don't waste your money, don't waste your time. Like that's just setting you up for serious failure. So
but I think also with that, like knowing you don't have to do everything, right? Like and I think that's what I love about where the People Co has gone is there's a business strategy. There has to be a business strategy. You're not a nonprofit. You need to make money. You need to have the rules. You need to have the accountability.
Yeah.
But like how do we do that in a way that supports the people that are there or, and sometimes it's not the right role. And sometimes people do leave. You see that less often, I think, than people think. But being able to really take time to understand that human in the role and support them where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And it isn't even, and like you said, like you don't have to do it all, but you do have to do something. And at a minimum, you have to communicate what you heard, right? And you might have heard things, you're like, well, we already do that. Yeah, well, you might, but clearly you're not communicating it appropriately because they don't understand it. So re-communicating it and tying it back to the listening sessions is a win-win, right? Like you're not doing anything more. You're just communicating what you're already doing. And I think sometimes that's as powerful or more powerful than, having to add another thing to your bucket of things that you already do. So
Yeah.
I think you hit on another topic, Ali, in itself is what's your communication strategy as a result of the listening sessions?
Yeah.
And you said too, whether it be listening sessions or some sort of engagement survey, if you're going to gather any type of feedback, having a communication strategy as to what you learned and if you're going to take any action, what type of action you're taking.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And just think about the spotlight you could put on some of your maybe new leaders or some of your leaders that don't get a lot of attention. If you're always having your CEO deliver a message or your, CHRO deliver the message, like give it to someone else and let them deliver the messages. So it's just a way for you to do what you do slightly differently and to get other people involved so that they see you as a team, not just as like, the one leader that's trying to push all of these things forward. It's really it's a team effort.
Yeah. My favorite thing too, I think, in an organization, any size, but especially in small businesses, we touch on it in the last podcast, but like a lot of times you're ready to hand over the keys to the kingdom because you think you're going to piss everybody off if you don't do XYZ, but it's in your head. Like they don't necessarily want, and a lot of times in organizations, I would say, even with a couple hundred people, oh, we can't compete with this. Oh, we can't compete with that. Well, like, what can you do? And that's what, especially on the recruitment side, it's like, I have a couple clients right now that I'm like, let's make a one sheeter or like some type of a document that like when we're talking to candidates, like it has all of the great things you can do, right? Because you are a lot more flexible than the big organizations in town because you have that autonomy. You are able to do more things as a small company. You might not have the robust healthcare plan that like some of the bigger companies get. That's not on you. That's just like an insurance thing, right? Like small businesses just don't have. That's like the number one thing I fight with a lot of small organizations, and it's like, but guess what? They're also probably giving out some type of like a wellness reimbursement, or a lot of small businesses do something to compensate for some of those things. So I've seen a lot of organizations that they'll just they'll add a bunch of PTO or they'll give a big bonus, and it's like literally I had a client do that last year and nobody thanked them. Nobody said, oh my gosh, that was like so great to have on Christmas. One person wanted to know when they were going to get another one. And so it's like, and it's just defeating then for that person because it's like, hey, like I thought that this would be something, and it's like, well, did they even care? Like, did they want that? There may have been something else that they wanted. So that wouldn't have cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
One of the other things you brought up, Nikki, too, sometimes, leaders, whether they be leaders of a small business or leaders of a team, they have a hard time letting go of things.
Yes.
And I've always been big on, it's not delegation, it's empowerment.
Yes.
So by sharing and getting, sharing some of those tasks or responsibilities is actually empowering, and a person feels proud to take on some of that responsibility because one, they're learning. Like you said, they know what they're doing on a more regular basis and they feel as though they're valued.
Yeah.
So I always just encourage leaders to think of it, not that you're delegating, you're actually empowering that person, and it works. It works for everyone that's involved.
Yeah.
And I think with that, yes, I'd love that. And because I think it is hard for leaders, especially if they've been there for a long time, to say like, oh, now, Susie's going to go do this for me. But I'll just do it because it's quicker. And that's in a couple of organizations lately. I've had that a lot. And it's like, but how much time is that taking you? And like, what could, she could go build out this whole cool program and like make it something that people want to use and want to do. But you don't have the time. So even though you might have time to do the task and get it off your plate, like you could have something really cool. Like in one of the organizations I work with right now, somebody actually is letting somebody else run and really make a whole intern program. And I'm like, wow, this is like this person who hasn't had a ton of experience in the professional world, but yet she's just right out of college, right? So she's done internships. She understands what that generation and all those folks want. So I'm working with them on that, and it's super cool to see that they've allowed her to really run with that and kind of wear that. And it's exciting for her. So
Yeah.
a lot of things like that you could do.
The only thing that I would caution you is if you are going to delegate or empower, like just make sure that leader also has the same, desire and, thoughtfulness around what they're trying to do. If it just doesn't want to come off as you're not aligned, right? And
Yeah.
I have seen in organizations when you do start to empower and delegate, it doesn't come off as authentic because it feels like someone else now is like,
You just do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just have to really be mindful around that empowerment, which I totally agree with the idea of delegating and empowering, which it is empowering to give someone else the opportunity, but just make sure your message is in sync, which goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is what's your communication strategy and how do you want to sound? You don't want to come off as inauthentic. And, even though it's someone else's voice, if you will, I'm using air quotes if you can't see me, you still want to make sure that you all sound and feel like you're moving in the same direction. It happens all the time where you start to empower others and all of a sudden now it feels like a business transaction versus what you really want it to sound like.
Yeah. And I would hope that one-on-one conversations are happening so that like you said, that conversation is more authentic and you're not just like pulling someone in and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. You're going to do it, but instead knowing it's something that they feel is an area they could grow in or a passion of theirs, or they've mentioned before, I could help I could help you. How could I help you more? And so again, I agree with you. Having some sort of conversation, communication strategy, one-on-ones, whatever they are, would help lead to that more authentic conversation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think moral of the story, talk to your people, whether it's you sitting down and talking or, bringing in a third party to come in and get some good information. I think it's less scary than a lot of people think. Your employees usually have more good things to say, and the experience I've had at least.
Yeah.
And I think it just furthers the organization because you turn over rocks and skill sets and ideas that weren't there before and could really help the organization go forward. So love it.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks for
joining us.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.